Yeah, bewitching hour, yeah. Sauce. Emperor Melkor's yes. Sauce. How you doing? Sauce. Today's on this Melkor's Monday, we're going to talk about one of the most influential brutal bands of all times. And that's right, as you can see here, so we're going to be talking about death. They are what is the most brutal death metal bands ever. In fact, they more or less created the genres of death metal, guys. And if you disagree, then you can go and die. It will be appropriate for you to die, because we're going to be speaking upon death. And I don't know, don't be this, well, of course, we think that Possessed created death metals. Well, you're wrong, and it's okay, as you've always known to be wrong, and the Emperor is never wrong, so once you shut up, poser, before I have to cut out your tongues and put it in your assholes and then super glue your assholes cut shut and feed you nothing but laxatives. So anyways, we're going to be talking about that first album, Scream Bloody Gore, guys. It's a beautiful album, guys. If you've never heard this, what are you doing in your life? Guys, it's probably too busy listening to Coppola and us. So, anyways, let's go ahead and kind of discuss this album first, right? Okay, so you've got about 12 brutal songs. There's not a bad song on this album, there's 0 skips, right? So the album starts out with Infernal Death, Zombie Ritual, Denial of Life, good, and Sacrificial. The song reminds me of my drummers, but anyways, so is the next song, Mutilation, and Regurgitated Guts, yes, alright. And that's the side A of the Savannahs. Side B is Baptized in Blood, and who doesn't remember the blood baptisms? I know I remember it really well. Then you have Torn to Pieces, Evil Dead, right? Okay, it's really good. So it's really great films as well. It's one of Melkor's favorites. Then, of course, the title song tracks, the names of the albums, Scream Bloody Gore, and Beyond the Unholy Graves, and then we finish off the records with Land of North Returns. So let's go ahead and get the records out of its seal and then look at it. It's in pretty good mint condition. This is, unfortunately, a repressing of the vinyls, and if you can find the original demo tapes, then let Melkor know, says if you have it, I'd like to come visit you. I promise I won't steal it. And of course, if you can also get the originals, vinyls of it is also really brutal, a part of brutal metal's histories, and it's really good. As far as the record goes, you know, it's nothing too fancy. It's just like the black ones, and the A sides are red, and the B sides yellows, like Melkor's hair. Yes. So it's really good albums, and I'd have to say, if you're looking to get into death metals, there's no other better place to start than here's with Deaths. And here's we have the illustrious photos of the band here, as you can see. Isn't it beautiful? And we have, of course, the lyric pages here. Yeah. So as you can see, it's also really, really great bands, and really influential. You know, Chuck Schuldiner is really influential on this. He's taught me how I can be more brutal in my own lyrics and my own, you know, writing of my own songs, right? And then we have Chris Raffred on drums here. And yeah, there's a lot of really cool history of the band in this, as well as some of the lyrics. And speaking of the lyrics, let's go ahead and change up these videos from the last ones, because I know we normally speak about the history first of the bands. But so let's go ahead and just listen to some of the lyrics, because they're really beautiful and powerful. So let's see. How about we start off with Zombie Rituals? This one is great songs from his albums. It's one of the singles. So starts off, revengeful corpse out to kill. Smell the stench your guts will spill. Vomit for a mind, maggots for a cock. With his axe, the corpse will chop. Stare into his eyes, now in his spell. Kiss the rotting flesh, now you're in hell. So like I say, it's actually it's almost black metals, but it's less metals, okay? And we'll get into that sort less a bit passions. So anyways, where were we? Drink from the goblet of gore. Tice the zombie's drug, now you want more. Drifting from the living, joining with the dead. Zombie dwelling maggots now infest your head. Zombie rituals. Zombie ritual. Rats, sauce. Ceremonies now complete. Chosen one is now deceased. Fucking raping zombie whores. Killing, feasting, no remorse. Stare into his eyes, now on his spell. Kiss the rotting flesh, now you're in hell. Drink from the goblets of gores. Tice the zombies' drugs, now as you want more. Drifting from the living, joining with the dead. Zombie dwelling malics now infest your head. Zombie ritual. Zombie rituals. Zombie rituals. Zombie rituals. Such a good songs, right? And okay. And then, of course, another very influential songs here, and it's kind of a short one, so I'll read it to you. It's the Evil Dance. So it says, trapped inside a laugh which is not yours, spirits within causing terror, fear and darkness, evil dads. A voice speaks out, all will die tonight. Insanity fills your mind. You'll hear them calling evil dad. As covered in blood, our hope is lost, forever to rot, controlled by the powers of the evil dead. So, say it's really uplifting lyrics, very beautiful rats. So, of course, then we wouldn't have the 9 title tracks of the original Norse. Screams, bloody gore. Is this the chuckiest? I was trying not to get distracted. So anyways, decapitated head, licking your cunt, sucking all the blood from your stump, intestinal guts taking their hold, leaving you dead, stiff and cold, controlling the minds of the bloodthirsty dead, unholy Caesar slicing through your heads. Who will survive, only time will tell. Dripping from your mouth comes a rancid smell. Lobotomized corpse shredding your flesh, leaving your body a bloody mess. Scream bloody gore. Scream bloody gore. And Zex, the reborn terror, blood comes sporting out, another to control. Added to the count, orders to destroy, rip and tear apart, wishing for the ends. Your death is just the start. Controlling the minds of the bloodthirsty dead, unholy Caesar slicing through your heads. Who will survive, only time will tell. Dripping from your mouth comes the rancid smells. Lobotomized corpse shredding your flesh, leaving your body a bloody mess. Scream bloody gore. Scream bloody gore. Armies of the dead held their leader's head, hungry for the flashlights, warm and fresh. Through the smoke wind will see who will come out alive. Now it's your turn to feel the pain, now it's your turn to die. Right, so it's really great lyrics. So it's a beautiful poet, Chuck says. It's great. So, I really can't recommend this record enough. Hang on, I'm gonna put it in its lips. I'm sure we all know the drills by now, right? So, anyways, so this is a really great album. Honestly, they don't really have bad albums, honestly. I don't really think so. But this is where you should start. I mean, and look how brutal the cover is. It's just beautiful and immaculate. So, I know some of you are like, well, of course, we want to learn. We want to learn and sit down and be at your feet and learn about the band Death. So tells us all. Okay, so this was a band that really comes from Florida, right, in 1983, and it was really formed by Chuck, Schuldiner, who's, became the band's sole vocalist, right, and then drummer and vocalist Cam Lee and guitarist Riz Ross. And it was formed out of what would become the Florida death metal scene, right? And Death is considered, the pioneering band in death metal. The band's 1987 debut album, Scream Bloody Gore. Just in case you forgot, there it is, look at it. right, has been widely regarded as one of the first death metal records, alongside the first records from Possessed and, of course, Necrophagia, right? Alright, so Death had a fluctuating lineup with, Chuck's really, aside from a European tour, being the sole consistent members of the band. And the group style progressed from the raw sound on its first two albums to a more complex one in later stages. They only grew in brutality and mayhems and destructions, right? And unfortunately, the band disbanded after Chuck Schuldiner died of glioma and pneumonia in December of 2001, right? But it remains an enduring influence on death metal to this days, right? So it's really sad, and I've really hoped that one day there'll be a great biopics of this band and their influence across rocks and metal histories, right? So Scream Bloody Gore is the debut studio album by American death metal band Death, released on May 25th, 1987 by Combat Records, right? And it's considered by many to be the first true death metal record. Chuck Schuldiner, the band's co-founding and leader, performed guitar, bass, and vocals, and composed all tracks on the album. So he was really blessed by Satan and to make some of the greatest metal musics of all times, right? John Hand is noted in the album's credit as playing rhythm guitar, though this was incorrect, and Hand was only in the band for a short period and never performed or recorded on this album. And this is the only album by Death to really feature drummer Chris Refferett, who had joined for the Mutilation demos, and the only Death album that was not recorded at More Sound Recordings, right? So if you cares about that thing, I thought that was kind of interesting, right? So another studios called Perseverance Holdings and Relapse Records reissued this album on May 20th, 2016 on CD, vinyl, and cassettes. The album was remastered for this release and also included the original Florida session as well as recordings of rehearsal performed in 1986. Chuck's and drummer Chris Refferett recorded the Mutilation demo, which caught the attention of Combat Records, who ultimately, signed on the bands. And then, of course, the bassist, whose name is Steve DiGiorgio, had previously played with the band as it shared practice space with Sawdust, recorded based on a test pressing of the album. Right, and so yeah, this is definitely that repressing of the albums, by the way, in case you was curious. So, the album was recorded twice, actually. So I was like, so you record the album twice, but it was recorded twice, okay? And the first recording of the album was done in Florida, of American Recording Studios, which was not equipped to produce. According to Refferett, the deal was sealed, and Combat trusted us to find a studio and go at it on our own, which turned out to be a terrible idea. He laughs, apparently. And he then follows and says, we were enthusiastic but unaware that the studio we picked was a bad choice due to the fact that the folks who ran it had no idea of what metal was. We figured our brutality would shine through, However, Refferett noted that the engineers just looked at us blankly, like they didn't know anything about metals, because they're posers, So imagine you're listening to only Chicago's and what's that other band, Kansas and stuff, and then they comes in and play zombie rituals, They're probably really scared and need to go to church, to prize away the scary sounds. So basically, the version of the album only featured guitar and drum tracks and was rejected by Combat Records when it was given to them. So therefore, they basically had to re-record the album, right? But Refferett remarks further on this, and they says they heard what had been going on and said, no, this is not going to work, so we had to scrap that plan. The track listing for the Florida sessions consisted of Torn to Pieces, Legion of Doom, Scream Bloody Gore, Sacrificial Cunt, later shortened to Sacrificial because the label asked the band to do so, possibly because they didn't want to get PMRC on their case, Mutilation, Land of No Return, and Baptized in Blood, right? So Combat Records and Death Tour Studios called the Music Grinder in Los Angeles, right? And Redford said it felt like an airplane hangar truck. And Redford re-recorded the album with Randy Burns as producers, right? He's pretty cool, actually. Band manager Eric Grief recalls when Steve Sinclair was making arrangements for the recordings of the album, Seconds Incarnations, from what I understand from Randy. It was just like try to refine this a little, try to make this as mainstream metal as you can, and all, because little sounds like a poser beat, doesn't he? And that was the instruction given to Randy when it came time for the re-records. Yeah, the Los Angeles session was released as a complete album by label Combat Records, later Relativity. And once Chuck returned to Florida, the first session was released as a promotional tape and was eventually bootlegged. Legion of Doom was a long-time staple of Def's rehearsal and live shows, and was indeed the first song written reaching back to when they were known as Mantas, right? And despite the many songs written during Def's demo days, only half of them were recorded for the albums, and the rest being new compositions such as Infernal Death and Baptized in Blood, originally appeared on the Infernal Death demo Mutilation, Zombie Ritual, and Land of No Return. Originally appeared on these demos, and Evil Dead and Beyond the Unholy Grave were originally on Death by Metals. And Beyond's is the Unholy Grave and Land of No Return were also cut from the vinyl and cassette versions of the album, though were included as CD-only bonus tracks on subsequent re-releases and other formats, along with 2 live audio tracks taken from the Ultimate Revenge 2's videos, right? So, it's very interesting. So, I would say, this album has a lot of really cool histories, and it's really influential, right? And I would say, it's music and lyrics, the styles for Scream Bloody Gore, right, has been described as drawing from bands such as Possessed and Slayers. Fucking Slayers, fusing the wild vitriol of thrash and black metal with a handful of swanky melodies and insanely violent lyrics. The sound has been called primitive. Written Ian Chris stated in The Sound of the Beast, the complete headbanging history of heavy metal, that the album emulated hardcore punk, evoking the dark moods of horror soundtracks from the drive-in zombie and cannibal horror films of George Romero. Metal Forces described the album as death metal at its utmost extremes. So it's brutal, which it is, and raw and offensive as it should be, as the kinds that separates the true death mutilators from countless trend-following wimps. So poser bitches, beware, you're not gonna like it, so just go off and die already, please. So listen to your shitty fucking Taylor Swift shits, right, and your fucking whatevers. So Sam Sonomsky of Pitchfork described the album as having a weed and beer-scented basement atmosphere, and the music as bludgeoning and immediate, right? And the album lyrics contain themes such as zombies and slasher film style violence, with also his already kind of reds. And Steve Hilvey of AllMusic says that although Scream Bloody Gore appears slightly musically amateurist in comparison to Def's later releases, it trades polish for savage gut-wrenching force and speed. And Osavon Nagel, an American progressive metal band, Cormont, observes the album lyrics are rife with slasher-flick violence, misogyny, homophobia, and sexual aggression, traits which class with the narrative of self-discovery and acceptance he crafted around his later more certificate works. Chuck Schuldiner played using a Boss distortion pedals on the album, and certain songs of the album were inspired by horror movies. Regurgitated Guts was inspired by the 1980 film City of the Living Dead, aka The Gates of Hell, and Beyond the Unholy Grave was influenced by the 1981 film The Beyond, and Zombie Ritual was inspired by the 1979 film Zombie, all of which were directed by Italian director Lucio Fulci. Torn to Pieces was inspired by Make Them Die Slowly. Evil Dead was named after the film of the same name, while the title track was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's Reanimators. Right? So, Scream's Bloody Gore is often, as we have said, considered the first death metal album, although some critics say Seven Churches by Possessed to be the first death metal records, but say it's wrong, and probably tries to suck their own dicks, right? So Eduardo Rivera of AllMusic writes that Seven Churches was a transition between thrash metal and death metal, while Scream Bloody Gore defined the core elements of death metals. Like I said, he's trying to, right there. But according to music journalist Hall McCover, Death's Due album was a turning point in extreme metals. Yes, it was, and qualified it as the first true death metal album. Let's say this is the correct opinions, of course. And Canadian journalist Martin Popoff indicated Schooner and his musician who introduced a new level of convolution that will mark the beginning of the next stage in extreme. And let's see, what else can we say here? Let me see, is this even worth reading? Yeah, so Steve Huey of AllMusic said Scream Bloody Gore as a necessary item for anyone interested in the genesis of death metal. And Jonathan Horsley of Music Radar said the album is one of death metal's foundational texts. According to Matt Mills of What Culture, Scream Bloody Gore deserves to be put on a pedestal along Black Sabbath, Kill 'Em Alls, and Iron Maidens, which each sorts. And Zonos, this band is great. I think the second album, Leprosies, and of course Spiritual Healings, they all deserve their own videos from the Emperor Melkor, and I will gladly do that in the future for you. But I thought it would be improper to start with Leprosy or Spiritual Healing because we have to start with Scream Bloody Gore, right? And if you're interested in to learn more about the bands, there's a really good documentaries on Amazon called, Deaths, and you should check it out. And it should be turned into movies, and it's really heartwarming to see how supportive Chuck's mother and father was. They allowed him to be super brutal in the garage, and I'm really envious of Chuck because he found, his drummers, his other guitars and his bassists, us tries to find them, and they all oppose us, right? And no one in this band is a poser. In fact, they vanquish posers and upset, conformist capitalist swines. So then they have to name calls the band and act as if they are, not good, or there's all these horrible things, which that's a good sign that people hate you, because then that means that you're more brutal than them and you're making them have to be faced to see the brutals and the evilness of the world, right? And the world is evil as it should be, so it's good, so it's really a good thing, right? Okay, so that's really good. So anyways, just to say, so kind of like sum it all up for you here, so we're gonna put this right here. The Brazilian thrash metal band Sepultura, right? They covered Zombie Rituals as a bonus track for the 2013 album The Mediator Between Head and Hands Must Be the Heart, and was included as the second side of the digital single The Age of the Atheist, The Age of the Poser, and the power metal band Dragon Force covered Evil Dead as a bonus track from their 2017 album Reaching Into Infinity, and it was also covered by the Norwegian black metal band Mayhem without else for the vinyl bonus disc of their 2019 album Diamonds, right? So you cannot really underestimate the influence of this band, because to go back to what I was saying in the videos before, during the 80s movements in America's here, in the fascist countries, we had death metal comes and then over, and Norway, and Sweden, and all that stuff, in those fascist countries, they had the black metal scenes, right? And sometimes the death metals and the black metal kids, they don't get along because, some of the death metal kids are posers, and we all know that in black metals there's a lot of posers, and they need to be horrifically scalped and fed their own entrails, like the death lyrics says, right? But even still, these two communities of extreme metals can appreciate and respect each other. Although, to be fair, I would have to say that death metal is a lot more kind of commercial and conformist than it is the black metals, right? Because, this is produced, then you can pretty much understand the lyrics and hear the progression of the chords, it doesn't sound like shit like the black metal, so it's not really that, too mainstream, but it's still good, and you still need to pay respects to death, because even though they try to make them poser. You can never make a poser an actual poser. So they can put on a face to be posers, but they're not ones really. So give this album a chance, and if you like it, I would immediately go into Leprosy and Spiritual Healings, and then go off onto their other records that I cannot tell you what a great times you have. And if you really enjoy like Zombie, Evil Dead, Reanimator, those kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, these kind of movies at the times in horrors, you can see it influencing the metal scene, and metal and horror kind of goes like this, and there's a lot of great bands that have all of that. So enjoy it, be brutal, be disturbing, be vicious, be grotesque, be all the things that the world hates you for. Do not conform to them. In fact, makes them conform to yours, and you will be ultimately metals, you will be black metals, and you'll be death metals. So until next witching hour, I hope that you have a good time listening to death, but I hope your day is shit, and I hope that you get the flus, you cough ups, and you get worried that you turn into a zombie, and I hope you do a zombie rituals and start killing all the things that you love and cause the whole world to die. So anyways, until next witching hours, stay brutals and hell Satans.